morning, everyone. As a high school student, applying to and going to college was a stressful but relatively easy thing. You took the SAT and or ACT when your school had it at their location. You decided whether you were going to go in-state or out-of-state, close or far away. You filled out your application, you sent it in, and you waited for a response. Relatively straightforward. Now I'm one of those people who has taken quite a bit of a respite between their undergraduate education and their graduate education. But I am now a person going back to school, for graduate school. And when I decided that, I figured it was kind of the same process. But you know what, this time I'm a working adult now. I'm smarter, I'm more in tune with what I really need to help my career along. I'm going to go ahead and research this a little bit better. As a high school student, I was pre-veterinary and I lived in Michigan, so Michigan State was the obvious choice. For graduate school, I wanted to make sure I really kind of broadened my area, really researched my topic, made sure I was going to the right place. Well, what I quickly found out is researching and looking at graduate school nowadays is completely different than it was when I was a high school student looking at undergrad. Nowadays, if you type in graduate school to Google or online, as most of us do our searching, the amount of results you get back is staggering. Online versus non-online, part-time versus full-time, massive online open course, certificate course, financial assistance. The amount of information that comes back at you is just absolutely overwhelming and is enough to almost turn you off of the experience entirely. So I figured this was the perfect point to do my research your topic speech, but I'm going to take a slightly different approach. I actually want to communicate 3 things you should research before you do your research into graduate school. 3 things that you need to do as an individual and be sure of yourself before you jump into the massive and broad category that is now graduate education. So the first thing, cost. Have an idea of what you want to spend, financial assistance or not. You don't need to have it down exactly, but you need to have a ballpark of what you're looking to spend overall on a graduate type of program. The reason for that is depending on what type of degree you want or where you want that degree from, the average cost is quite a different range of things. For a Master's of Science, the research I found is that if you want a Master's of Science type of graduate degree from a private institution, you're going to pay on average about $40,000 versus a public institution is $15,000 annually. Huge difference. For a Master's in a Humanities or Social Science, kind of relatively the same. $36,000 annually for a private university for a Master's in Humanities, Social Science, something of that nature, versus a $16,000 annually for a public university in the exact same area. So wide range of costs there. Now, if you look at something like a Master's in Business Administration, an MBA, that is completely different. An MBA at a private university tends to be about $40,000 annually, whereas at a public university, it's $35,000 annually. So public versus private makes a huge difference when it comes to a science or humanities related degree. But if you're kind of looking for that middle ground in an MBA, a lot different. Also, the second thing you need to look at is the type of program, the type of education you want. This really kind of falls into, I would say, 3.5 to 3.25 different type categories nowadays. In undergraduate education, especially when I went over 10 years ago, you pretty much went to class. Whether that was in your pajamas or in jeans or in a suit, it didn't matter. You got your clothes on, you went to class, you sat down, you listened to a professor talk. Nowadays, basically the categories you have available are full-time in classroom, which, to be honest, I'm not going to talk about. We're all working adults. I doubt any of us have the financial ability and or the ability to have a boss who says, yeah, take 3 years off, go get that degree, and your job's going to be sitting here waiting for you. That's not going to happen. So really what we end up looking at is some type of part-time program. But nowadays, people have a lot of different options. Online education is huge nowadays. U.S. News now reports that over 35% of all master's students are taking at least 80% of their classes online. So over a quarter of graduate students nowadays are completely pushing in-classroom work out of the way and are going completely to online education. So is that something that, as a person, you work well with? If that's the case, online education might be the right choice. In a part-time program, these are the programs where you do actually go and sit in a classroom. But again, this is where we kind of get into our 3.5 to 3.25. Because in a part-time program, you now have the option for traditional evening classes, which is usually 1 to 2 nights a week, could be on campus, could be off campus at a third-party location. It's probably going to take you about 3 to 6 years to complete. A lot of a lot of universities now are going to an executive type graduate course. These are specifically designed where you go for a full weekend once a month, maybe every other weekend once a month, and are much more focused, hardcore basically, programs where you're able to finish a full graduate degree in 1 to 2 years versus that 3 to 6 years. So the type of program you choose is going to make a big difference in terms of how much time you want to spend on this graduate degree. Can you take the 3 to 6 years, or do you really want to be done in 1 to 2 years? And the third thing is, what do you really want out of your program? This is the third thing that you need to consider before you start doing research into graduate programs. Do you want to make networking and other types of connections within your industry or across industries? An MBA or that executive type program is probably the best program for you, because you have the chance to sit in a very focused environment with people at your level, earning the same degree, but working for a variety of different companies. If you're just looking for higher paycheck, in that case, usually what you'll find is the Masters of Science or Masters of Humanities programs are, well, there's no guarantee, have a more direct translation to a potentially higher paycheck. Kind of an interesting thing I found here. A Master's in Engineering tends to, on average, allow people $10,000 to $20,000 more in an annual salary, whereas a humanities master's degree tends to only offer probably $3,000 to $10,000 on average in an annual salary. However, humanities tends to require a master's degree to get a position within that field, more so than a science-related field such as engineering. So unfortunately, you end up with less of an increase in pay, but more of a requirement to have that to stay within your field. And finally, what you really need to decide is whether or not you feel your graduate program is going to have a direct application to your career. And this is what it really came down to for me. Am I going to be able to directly apply these skills to the job I have, to the career I want, and in what specific ways? That helps you determine whether or not that program should be technical or whether or not that program should be more business related. So where did I end up? In my backyard again, at Michigan State for their executive MBA program. But I do know that I researched these 3 things first, and I do know that I'm very confident in my decision because of the research I did prior to my research. Thank you.